Japan is living in the future, or is it? Now, Japan often is thought of as the forefront of technology, but what if I told you that was all a lie? Now, that would be quite the claim, but there is some truth in that. I think the biggest example people bring up whenever they talk about Japan's technological prowess is Pepper, a robot developed by SoftBank. Now, it could read human faces and basic human emotions, and it was introduced to the world on June of 2014, and just about a year later, it would be released to the consumer market. Now, you can imagine my disappointment when I came to Japan when I found out that this was mostly exaggerated by media and news articles. Pepper is actually phased out around 2020, so most of the ones you can find are usually only at SoftBank stores or really nice areas, or areas like museums. And even if you do find them, they're not always guaranteed to be turned on because Pepper does need to rest, and especially with the electricity prices rising, sometimes people just use them as decorations rather than actual tools. But what about robot hotels, you may be asking yourself? Well, there's only one company that really does robot hotels, and it's called Hina Hotel, and even then they only have about 20 locations. And considering the fact that their house management is still done by humans, I couldn't even say it's fully automated. Only the clerk and front desk are robots, so at least we don't really have to worry about robots taking all of our jobs just yet. One of the interesting things about Japan is the lack of central heating and cooling. Now, this may seem like a strange nitpick considering Japan has some really nice air conditioning units, but the hallways and side rooms are to the will of the weather. Now, imagine this, right? You're sitting in your bedroom, it's a nice cool 75, it's like 110 out. You decide to go use the restroom. The minute you step outside your room, that heat wave just hits you and you gotta go to the bathroom and you're just sweating up a storm, right? And that's my biggest qualm, right? You know, I took it for granted back home in America where I can just walk anywhere around the house and it'll be nice and cool no matter what the temperature is outside. But in Japan, it's a bit different. Only about the living room, the bedroom, the dining room, and mostly the main important rooms are actually have an AC unit. Now, if you have a lot of money, you could probably leave on all the air conditioning units on your house to cool it down, but considering Japan's insulation and rising energy prices, it's probably not that economically beneficial to do that, and you'll just end up burning through your money instantly, so you know, you just gotta bear with it. Kind of sucks. That's my biggest complaint. I hate the heat, because thing is, whenever it's cold on, you can always put on more layers, but when you're hot, there's only so many layers you can take off, you know, so yeah, I kind of miss I'm excited for winter. Aside from the scorching temperature, a lot of Japanese people still rely on news and newspaper for weather updates. And that's because around 15% of population still use flip phones, or kantan keitais as they're known in Japanese. And although there are a lot of Japanese companies that sell smartphones, I often find that companies like Apple and Samsung far outdo what the Japanese companies can. And I think it's mostly due to the fact that Apple and Samsung are the biggest competitors, meaning that they put more time and money into research and just mostly improving their phones. So it's really no competition. Most of the time I notice that Japanese phones, they always lack something and their UI is a bit outdated. Pertaining to the topic of Japanese companies, if you were to walk into an office, you'd be surprised to see how common fax machines and flip phones are, especially since they're distributed by the company themselves. Now, the average age of a company president in Japan is around 60 years old, so it makes sense that a lot of companies are still using these outdated technologies and why it's so ingrained within business. On a side note, I like to mention how common payphones are. Now, about every metro has one, every mall almost has one, and most major supermarkets have one around. So if you need to make a call, unfortunately it's only local, so you can't call internationally. And you can actually pay for payphone cards, little cards that give you a certain amount of call time, and you can give that out as a gift. You know, you can carry it around with you, which doesn't really make sense to me personally, because unless they give you a better deal, which I'm sure they might, it's literally so cheap using a payphone. I find it hard to believe that you wouldn't have coins, especially in a cash-based society. But it is kind of nice to have a little slip of paper that lets you call up to like 30 minutes without having to constantly put in coins, right? Yeah, I don't know, that's just a quick little observation, very interesting. You don't really see that often in America anymore, and most of the ones you do see in America, they're out of order and they're also really unkept.
Here comes the money. Here we go. Money talk.
When the topic of money is brought up in Japan, the phrase cash is king often comes up, and for a very good reason. In 2021, around 75% of all transactions were using cash, and that was only down by 10% by 2023, with about 65% of all transactions being cash. Now, these statistics are staggeringly high when you compare them that only about 20% of transactions in the US are using cash, with about the rest being used with debit or credit cards. For those who are looking for alternatives to credit and debit cards, you can get IC cards, which are basically prepaid cards, with the three most popular ones being a Suica, which I have, a Passmo, or a Ikoka. Now, these are most commonly used to pay for public transportation because they automatically calculate your bus or train fee, making it really nice and convenient. It's so much nicer having an IC card than having to calculate the cost of a train ticket, because I mean, look at this. Anyone who prefers this is a masochist. You cannot tell me otherwise. And actually, some convenience and fast food restaurants actually accept these as a form of payment. Now, even though these are heavily restricted, Japan is slowly expanding towards accepting more forms of payment. Now, an app that has been gaining popularity in Japan is called PayPay, and it sounds like PayPal and it works in a similar way. Now, I'm very glad to see this being accepted at more restaurants and businesses, because it shows that Japan is moving from a cash-based society to one that is accepting more digital form of payments. And this is really good because a lot of people in Japan carry over 10,000 yen on cash, which is around $70. And I just can't bear the thought of having to go out every time I want to go shopping carrying around $20,000 or $140 on cash on me. Because me personally, carrying that much money that I could easily lose, drop, or get snatched is just such a security risk to me personally. So being able to focus more on using cards is just such a nice relief, and it kind of relieves you from the stress of having to carry so much money at once. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please take it with a grain of salt. I know there are parts of Japan which are pretty advanced. It's all about perspective, really. And I did kind of exaggerate some things to kind of clickbait. But yeah, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Otherwise, I will find your house and break in, okay? That is a promise. But anyways, thank you so much for hanging out. Hopefully I have a more consistent upload schedule, and I'll see you next time. Bye!